Radio Now 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.
Hello, I'm Emily Metheny, your host. Coming up soon in September, RadioONE will be sharing resources and talking about mental health across all of our platforms and stations. Because from the pandemic to school starting to personal relationships and beyond, people are experiencing depression, anxiety, and maybe even suicidal thoughts. To kick off these conversations, I had the chance to talk with Joey Gray-Purcell of Families First. If you have listened to the show before, you've probably heard me give the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-TALK before. But locally, Families First has a crisis line that's 24 hours and confidential and free. Joey told me about the line during our conversation, but started by talking about what the organization has seen during the pandemic when it comes to mental health.
So since the pandemic, we've seen a lot more diverse clientele, a lot of people that work full-time, but now they're working from home. A lot of kids who are doing school from home. We're seeing a lot of individuals who maybe cannot afford a therapy services, or adults who are, hesitant about receiving services. We're getting a lot more people, and our services are a lot more accessible right now because we are offering virtual services. And so these services are available for all people, regardless of their situation. We have home-based services, we have virtual services. Like I mentioned, we have evening hours, we have a sliding fee scale. We have a lot of ways that we're making things accessible.
And how can people find out about those services?
We have multiple ways to reach us. Our website is FamiliesFirstIndiana.org. We also have a Facebook at Families First Indiana. We have a Twitter that's Families First IN, LinkedIn, Families First IN. We have a YouTube that's Families First Indiana. We have Instagram that's Families First IN. Or you can reach us. Our main office line is 317-634-6341.
If someone's not familiar with Families First, what's the first thing that they need to know?
There's two main things that we do. We believe that strong individuals and families are the foundation of a healthy, productive society. We offer support for many problems that are tough for people to address alone, talking about addiction treatment, community education, sexual assault services, domestic violence services, play therapy for kids, individual and couples counseling, family preservation. Those are all those are all issues that we all deal with. They're tough to deal with by ourselves, so that's why Families First, our top priority is to make sure that individuals know that they don't have to go through those issues alone. Kind of the second thing that Families First focuses on is we help all kinds of people in our community through the challenges and changes of life. So that's like whether it's everyday issues like depression or child behavior or substance use or relationship problems, or tougher issues like suicide prevention, domestic violence, child abuse. We have a lot of accessibility and an array of services.
And you kind of touched on it with the virtual sessions that are happening. How can people find out more about the virtual sessions and how to register and all of that?
Great question. So all of those things I mentioned before, like the Facebook, Instagram, our website, YouTube and Twitter and those types of things, all of those resources are where we are updating different groups that we might have that are available to the community, or if we're doing you and I first started talking about the suicide prevention, if we're having a meeting on that, or if we're doing a training session or something. We also we have a Families First blogs, and that's just accessible on our website, FamiliesFirstIndiana.org/blog. And then we also have a Family Table podcast, and the podcast is also FamiliesFirstIndiana.org/podcast, but it's also on Spotify, Google, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, those types of things. There's several episodes on that gives more information to our services. And then I can give you the information on the crisis line. Our crisis line is a member of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Network. And if you're trying to reach the crisis line at Families First, you can call anytime, 24/7, 317-251-7575, or you can text CSIS to 839-836. And it's a 24-hour crisis line. It's there for people who are in crisis or contemplating suicide. And so I think the important thing to remember about this crisis line is it's anyone, any age can call the crisis line at any time. It doesn't cost anything. It's free of charge. And it doesn't have to be, crisis for everybody looks different. So it doesn't have to be, as intense as contemplating suicide. It could be conflicts with friends or family members, financial, legal, employment issues, substance use, stress management, any issues with depression or separation, divorce, abuse, LGBTQ issues, grief, bereavement, anything that is causing stress that an individual feels like they might need some more support or they feel alone. We definitely recommend calling our crisis line.
And can I have you give that number one more time, Joey?
Absolutely. So our crisis line is 317-251-7575, or you can text CSIS to 839-836.
Excellent. And since schools have started back up, and some schools are on a hybrid schedule, some schools are solely virtual, some students are back in the building, what have you been seeing with mental health among children and their families?
Yeah, so me personally, I do have a few families, and I've seen definitely increase in stress. There's a lot of stress around getting, meeting needs of schoolwork, meeting needs of parents that have full work schedules. And then you've got the household chores. And on top of that, you're around each other a lot more because of the COVID. And so we're stuck inside a lot more, so there's an increase in negative family interactions. And it's hard to, it's also a very stressful time, it's aside from being kept inside and not being outside, being with friends, doing our usual going to school and going to work. Aside from that normal routine, it's stressful, and what we're hearing in the news and what we're experiencing in our neighborhoods and at our doctor's offices and at the grocery store, it's a stressful time. And so sometimes when we come home, it's easy to take that stress out on each other. It just is more accessible when it's somebody that you live with, unfortunately. So I've definitely seen families have an increase in stress. However, I've also seen, looking at the silver lining, I've also seen families be a lot more vulnerable, right? I've seen families being more open to different services, whether that be virtual learning or working from home, Zoom conferences, and definitely mental health services. I think that our society is working on making mental health less taboo, and as a result, I'm definitely seeing families taking care of themselves, looking out for each other if they notice somebody is more anxious than usual, or if one of their children might have experienced a traumatic event, they want some extra help, because as parents we can only do so much, right? Mm-hmm. We can only provide for our families in so many ways before it becomes appropriate to reach out and get some extra help, because we need a break sometimes. We need some extra help. So those are kind of both sides I've seen. I'm talking a lot just to say that I have seen an increase in stress among families. I've also seen an increase in vulnerability, mm-hmm. Openness to trying something new in order to, maintain those positive relationships.
And if a family has been having a lot more stress, how can they start that conversation to become more vulnerable with each other and start seeking some of these services?
Ooh, great question. Yeah, so mental health it's not just your brain, right? I mean, It's emotional, it's psychological, it's social. So it might be hard to just, it's hard to just have a sit down with our kids and talk about feelings, right? Like sometimes it's just awkward. Sometimes we don't know where to start. A good place to start that Families First recommends is with stories. So kids love stories, books, cartoons, or movies, and so stories could be a way to start getting kids to talk about feelings with like books or movies. Like I know we talk a lot about at Families First. We talk a lot about the movie Inside Out, the Pixar movie. So that can be a good way to start talking about emotions and feelings and mental health. Also, games. Games is a good way to talk to kids of all ages. That it can be a way to talk about anger, and working together, teamwork, and sometimes games can be a good outlet for us to express our feelings, like in the moment, right? I'm feeling sad because my player lost, or I'm feeling mad because you took my Monopoly money or whatever. And it's also important it's important for us as parents to make sure that we're practicing stress relief. We all, like I mentioned earlier, we're all experiencing stress, right? Parents and children alike. We're all stressed with what's going on, and it's easy to take it out on each other. So I think, if you're looking at approaching your child about how they're feeling right now in this moment, you're thinking about games, you're thinking about stories or movies. It's also important for us as adults to practice stress relief because our kids are watching everything that we do, right? So if we are going for a walk after a stressful Zoom conference, if we're practicing deep breathing when the baby spills the cereal all over the floor, if we are working on a coloring page as a way to like decompress, if we are doing those things, our kids are going to be, one, genuinely curious about what we're doing, and two, they're going to learn through our positive habits, our healthy habits, and through us prioritizing our self-help or self-care as parents. Our kids are going to do that too. Our kids are going to see, I need to take care of myself right now. And even when our kids get older, when they have families of their own, they'll know, I always saw my dad taking care of himself after he had a stressful work call, or I always saw mom taking a walk after dinner was stressful with the baby. They'll see that and they'll be able to pass it down generationally, as a way to kind of relieve some stress, but also to feel more like your baseline, feel more like yourself.
And on the blog that you mentioned earlier, are there articles that kind of talk a little bit more about the stress relief and different ideas and different potential things to do?
Oh, absolutely. So glad you brought this up, Emily. So they have Families First. There's a lot of blogs. It's plethora. So helpful. If you go to familiesfirstindiana.org/blogs, there's so much to look for. But there's 4 in particular that might be helpful with the pandemic, mental health, different things that are going on right now for families. The first article is called Tips for Back to School Anxiety During a Global Pandemic. Another blog titled Kids and Mental Health. And that article was kind of what I was just talking about now with the games and the, stress relief and those types of things. The third blog is called Tools to Thrive. And the fourth blog is called Techniques to Combat Anxiety. And those blogs are really, they're kind of more specific to what we're experiencing right now as a society.
And people just need to remember they're also not alone. They can also reach out to your crisis line. Can you give that number again?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the crisis line is 317-251-7575, or you can also access it by texting CSIS to 839-863.
Perfect. And then coming up, we have the National Suicide Prevention Week. That's on September 6th through the 12th. And people can watch on all of your social media channels, on your blog, just to find out a little bit more information and learn more from you guys, right?
Absolutely, yes. That's the best way to stay up to date on what we've got going on.
Excellent. And Joey, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to say one last, definitely use the crisis line. It's a good way to know that you're supported, and it's totally accessible. And it's also, if you are not feeling like you're in a crisis or that you're alone, definitely use our crisis information to share information with a loved one or someone who you might have some concerns about too. We gotta look out for each other during this time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And if someone sees a peer or an older family member struggling, how can they approach them and start that conversation?
That's a great question. Just because we want to be sensitive to what people are going through. I just think it's best if someone we love is going through a crisis situation. First of all, you can definitely call the crisis line yourself and find out how you can help them. But I also think it's important to let them know that what they're going through is, it's normal. They're not alone. It's something common that we've all gone through, that many people have gone through, and that we love them. We support them no matter what. Here are some things I'm willing to do for you. Can I bring over some food for you to help during this time? Can I watch your kids on a Saturday so you can have some time? Do you want to talk about things? Just making sure that our loved ones are feeling supported and validated in their emotions. I think that's the best way that we can help the ones that we love who might be struggling.
Excellent. And then one last time, Joey, can you give your crisis line with Families First?
Absolutely. You can call 317-251-7575 or text CSIS to 839-863.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
For the second part of the show, Roxy Randall, Manager of Community Outreach for the Indianapolis Animal Care Services, joined us to talk about what the organization does and how to keep pets safe.
So what Indianapolis Animal Care Services, or IACS, does is we are run by the city. So we are obligated to take in any animal that is found in Marion County. And so that makes us an open intake shelter. So right now we are doing intakes by appointment only. So that means that while we are still taking in every animal that's brought to us, there's just a little bit of a waiting period in order to bring the animal. And during that time, if it's a stray, we're encouraging people to try and look for the owner on their own. Indy Lost Peddler is a really great resource, and we sing their praises a lot because they help reunite pets with their owners without them having to come into the shelter. Because coming into the shelter could potentially expose that animal to, upper respiratories and things like that, which are unnecessary and they don't need to deal with. But kind of the flip side of that also is if an animal is brought in, it's possible that the owner may not know that the shelter exists, so they may not know to come looking there for their animal. So it's possible that they may not be reunited, or it may take even longer until that owner learns about the shelter. So that's been kind of one of our biggest obstacles right now, is that part of it. But other things that we do at the shelter, we have an Indy Cares program. So animals that are facing surrender, we have a conversation with the owner, and we see what it is that's forcing them to have to come surrender their animal, and we see if we can help them. Through that program, we're able to help with veterinary costs. We are not able to help with ongoing issues, but if it's like a one-time surgery for an animal, we're able to help with that, or like those kinds of things. We help with spay, neuter, and getting vaccines up to date for the animals if that's a barrier to keeping them. We also help with training resources, food, toys, crates, kind of any necessary materials that we feel like could help the owners. And we also do a lot of education about like behavior problems or like things that the animals may be stressing them out that helps them stay in the home instead of coming into the shelter.
And where can people learn more about the programs that you are offering and the services?
So that information can be found on indy.gov and then /animal care services. We also have a Facebook page that we do a lot of our announcements on, so you can be sure to follow us there and look for updates about some of our programs that we offer that just might be on a hold right now because of the current climate, such as our Freedom for a Day program. We are still doing adoptions, but again, they're also by appointment only because we are limiting the number of people within the shelter. So if someone comes to adopt an animal, they can't enter the building. Instead, on their application, they'll indicate what animals they're interested in. As long as it's just a couple, our adoption staff are really great about helping people find the animal that's a good fit for their home. So when they come for that appointment, if it's a dog, the adoption counselor will bring the dog to an outdoor run, let the family hang out, talk to them, answer any questions. If that dog's not a good fit, they try and help them find another one during their appointment time. And for cats, we do have a little area that they just come right into the building to interact with the cat.
Excellent. And then just touching on helping animals and keeping the animals at home if possible. How can people keep their animals safe during the hot summer months? So
during all of this heat, it's been very hot here recently. You can make sure that they're out for short periods of time. Per city ordinance, if it is 90 degrees or above, or if there's a heat advisory out, all animals that you would normally have outside must be brought inside to a temperature-controlled facility to prevent heat stroke. I would say short amounts of time outside. Make sure you're watching them. Make sure they have access to lots of water. We also want to encourage people to look for signs of heat stroke in dogs, which include rapid panting, a bright red tongue, vomiting, diarrhea. Just they're not acting normal. Sometimes they can see they're a little out of it, a little dizzy. In that case, you want to bring them inside and you want to contact your vet as soon as possible. And you don't want to immerse them in anything that is too terribly cold because you don't want to shock their system. Mm-hmm. So some cool rags and small amounts of water until you can get them to a vet for emergency treatment.
Would ice be a good thing to offer your dog, or would that also shock their system?
If they're experiencing heat stroke symptoms, it would be a shock to them. But if they're acting normally, you can offer dog treats that are frozen in ice or toys that are in ice to help try and keep them cool. But if they have heat stroke symptoms, that'll be too much of a shock.
And then when it comes to going for walks, what's the kind of the rule of thumb for pavement if you're walking your dog in your neighborhood?
If you take the back of your hand and you put it on the pavement and you can't hold it there for 5 seconds, then it is too hot to walk your dog on that pavement because it'll burn their paw pads.
And recently I had a chance to talk with FIDO, Friends of Indianapolis Outdoor Dogs, and they mentioned that you guys have a relationship.
Yes, we absolutely love FIDO. They've been a really great resource to us because FIDO does a lot of fantastic things that also help keep dogs in the home and keep dogs, confined and keep owners up to date and in compliance with city ordinances. We have a couple of our ACOs that work very closely with them, and we're grateful for that partnership, and we're able to support each other so much. If anybody, sees something that they want to report, you can call the Mayor's Action Center. That is 317-327-4622. If you need to make a phone call, if you're able to do it online, or you can download the app for your phone, you can go to Request Indy.
And at what point should a neighbor be concerned for the pets?
If they see that, the pet has been outside and it's over 90 degrees, or there's a heat advisory, and they've been outside for 30 minutes or longer, and they don't see an adult out there with the animal, then they should make a report.
If you want to reach out, or if you have topics you'd like me to cover, you can reach me at Metheny, that's EMETHENY, at radio-one.com. Thank you for listening, and please join me again next week. Until then, have a great week.
Radio Now 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.